Welcome to SplitSecond. If you want to buy the best sleeves or other magic-related accessories, head down to Dragon Shield using the affiliate link below. This week we received Tymna for supporting the show on Patreon for 1 year now. He brought his beloved Najeela deck, while he's trying out Seek Robot and Splint's Faces list for Tymna and Thrasios Sacred Guide list. Elder put together a Gale Waterdeep Prodigy and Scion of Alaster Spicy Brew, and David is piloting Snoopless Ruric Thar by Surreal and Timothy 1000. Tymna is going first and he kept his first 7, with a single mana conflicts for lands but with a Mox Diamond for possible ramp in case he finds a land on top. Shatterfang can become a powerhouse with cards such as Fatebreaker and Grim Hireling, as well as Najeela of course. Opposition Agent might be able to snatch something from his opponents, and he has Summoner's Pact for a Derevi already, Mental Misstep and Flusterstorm for interaction. Bal also kept his first 7, with a Tropical Island and Command Tower for lands, Land or Elves for ramp or an early tutored creature through survival of the fittest. Gitax and Probe can test the waters in case of attempting to win or simply cantrip, Swan Song and Flusterstorm for interaction as well. Elder is on trend with first keeps, plus Saint Mire and Crystal Vein for lands with a Gitax and Probe as well, to cantrip and produce some value with Gale just in case. Fabricate can be aimed at some ramp to try to assemble that Time Twister paired with Narset Parter of Veils for a possible win, Force of Negation for some interaction. David also kept his first 7, seems like these people don't like shuffling. Mana Confluence and Wooded Foothills for lands with a Wild Growth and Priest of Titania for some ramp. Collector Oof is a great hate bear, and then Dragonborn Champion is great card advantage through Ruric Thar. Vivian Monsters Advocate can help assemble Kiki-Jiki lines or find other key creatures to interact with the board. Ready for the match? Tymna starts the game but unfortunately didn't find any land, so he plays a Mana Confluence and passes. Bal plays a Command Tower and casts a Land or Elves. Elder starts his turn with a Gitax and Probe looking at Tymna's hand. He draws, plays a Blissed Mire and passes. David plays a Wooded Foothills and cracks it for a Taiga, enchanting it with a Wild Growth and passing. Tymna draws into mana, but not a land. He casts a Birds of Paradise and passes. Bal plays an Underground Sea and casts Thrasios, passing with open mana. Elder cracks Blessed Mire in the end step to find a tapped Watery Grave. He gets to his turn, plays a Crystal Vein and casts a Ledger Shredder, passing afterwards. David draws, plays a Mana Confluence and casts a Priest of Titania, ending his turn. Tymna is still dried out, not even a fetch for a forest, so he can cast his Utopia Sprawl, so he passes discarding 1 at cleanup. Bal plays a Tropical Island and casts a Wild Growth on his Underground Sea. He then casts his Tymna, triggering the Shredder, and Elder discards his Fabricate. Bal then goes to combat, attacking David with Thrasios and Tymna with the Elves, triggering Tymna and paying 2 life to draw 2 cards. He still casts his Gitaxian Probe, targeting Elder and seeing quite a scary hand. He draws and then exiles an Elvish Spirit Guide for green to cast an Elves of Deep Shadow, ending his turn, realizing a bit too late how he's feeding the Priest of Titania. Elder draws, plays his Reflecting Pool and brings out his Narset, Parter of Veils. Bal mentions to the table he also has a Time Twister at hand, that they must be careful. Elder ponders for his second but decides not to activate Narset, since she can survive to his turn still with a possible activation up, in case Bal would attack with everything. We're back to David's turn. He plays an Urza Saga, gaining its first ability. He casts a Mana Vault, but Tymna responds to it by casting a Mental Misstep, hoping to delay David a bit. David then casts Vivian Monsters Advocate, triggering Shredder, and Elder discards a Dothy Voidwalker. David then upticks Vivian, creating a Beast token, entering play with a Reach counter on it. He looks at the top card of his deck and passes. We're back to Tymna's turn, and still no lands to be found, so he casts an Imperial Seal to search for a Mana Crypt to the top, and passes, holding some interaction for Elder's Twister. Bal plays a City of Brass and casts a Dothy Voidwalker. He then attacks Tymna for 2, only to gain some life, and passes. Elder draws and decides to activate Narset, hoping to find some rock from the top. He reveals a Mystical Tutor and then casts a Cabal Ritual, also cracking his Crystal Vein for 2 colorless. Tymna ponders on countering this, but Bal would be too far away without much competition, so Elder gets those 3 black mana. He casts Scion of Alaster, triggering Shredder, and discards a Dismember with a Void counter. He casts Gale Waterdeep Prodigy with the last floating mana and passes. David gets to his turn, draws, and his Urza Saga gains its second ability. He then downticks Vivian and proceeds to cast his commander Ruric Thar the Unbowed. Vivian's ability triggers and Bal responds to it by activating Thrasios and revealing an Assassin's Trophy. Vivian's trigger then resolves and David finds a Treasonous Ogre to the battlefield. He follows that with a Hyrax Tower Scout, triggering Shredder, and due to the Sign of Alaster, Elder looks at the top 2 cards of his library, puts a Reanimate into exile with a Void counter due to Bal's Dothy, and then draws a card, to then discard a Limdol's Vault, also to Bal's Dothy. Hyrax Tower Scout enters and he untaps Priest of Titania with it. David then pays 9 life to add 3 red mana to cast Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker. The social stack opens and Elder mentions he might have something for it, and once David activates Kiki-Jiki targeting the Tower Scout, Elder responds with a deadly relic targeting Kiki-Jiki. The table fears swats or veils, but the goblin is exiled for good. The ability still resolves, creating a copy token of Tower Scout, entering and untapping Priest of Titania, to then tap it again and pay 3 more life to cast Dragonborn Champion, which paired with Ruric Thar is a great source of card draw. He then attacks Pina with the Tower Scout's token and passes. Pina draws and casts his Mana Creep, taking 6 damage from Ruric Thar, and triggering Dragonborn Champion as well for a card draw to David. He then casts his Shatterfang Squirrel General, which is also a warrior for Najeela purposes. Shredder triggers and Elder looks at the top 2 cards of his library, puts a Rain of Filth into exile with a Void counter, draws and discards a Mystic Remora, and without further actions, Pina passes. Bal gets to his turn and ponders on his options, with a huge board from David and not much to do at this point. Bal proposes to Elder to kill his Shredder with Assassin's Trophy so he gets a land, to then cast his Mystical Tutor for a Deluge, in order to reset the board, and eventually it seems to be the best option. So he casts it, triggering Ruric Thar and takes 6 damage, and in turn Dragonborn Champion triggers and David draws 1 card. Shredder dies and Elder gets an island with the trophy. Bal then attacks with Dothy towards Vivian and all his other creatures towards Narset, hoping to balance the board as he passes the turn, and Elder casts his Mystical Tutor. Ruric Thar triggers and he takes 6 damage, in turn triggering Dragonborn Champion and David draws. Elder searches for a Toxic Deluge and proceeds to his turn. He looks at the top 2, puts a Pact of Negation into exile and draws the Deluge. He attacks Bal with Gale just because he can, and then in the second main phase casts the Toxic Deluge, paying 6 life total and triggering Ruric Thar for another 6 damage, and Dragonborn Champion draws David a card. The board is reset and we're back to David's turn. He untaps, and this time it's not Bal but Pina who casts a Silence in his upkeep. With Saga about to reach its final chapter, another Ruric Thar cast would put Pina way behind to ever get into the game. This way, David draws and the saga reaches the 3rd chapter. He activates it in response to create a construct since he won't be able to do anything else. He searches for a Sol Ring and then plays a Misty Rainforest, and cracks it right away since everyone is silenced and Pina is tapped out. He gets a tapped Stomping Ground and passes. Pina rolls and takes 3 from the crypt. He still doesn't find any land, so he prefers to pass with Open Interaction, rather than cast Najeela and be tapped out. Bal gets to his turn, and considering Elder could cast Time Twister next turn, he casts his Survival of the Fittest, but since Elder is planning to indeed twist the table, he casts his Force of Negation, pitching a Phantasmal Image. In response, however, Bal casts a Swan Song, but still in response to this, Pina flashes in his Opposition Agent. It does resolve, but with a new round of priority, Bal responds with his Flusterstorm, putting 2 copies on the Swan Song and 3 on the Force of Negation, to make sure his survival resolves, and Elder has no burn to defend himself. Bal then casts his own bird and passes the turn. Elder draws, plays a Gemstone Caverns and fires his Time Twister. He still holds priority and casts a Chain of Vapor on Bal's Survival of the Fittest, which Bal then copies by sacrificing his Tropical Island and sends Pina's Opposition Agent to his hand. Twister resolves, and now we could say this is the reset of the game. While Pina has less permanence, you can also see what him and everyone else drew, as we found that it could be interesting to see this fresh start. We're back to David's turn. He plays a forest and casts his Toski, Bearer of Secrets. He still casts a Shadow Spear and equips it on his construct to start regaining some life back. He attacks Bal with it for 4 damage, triggering Toski for a card draw and ends his turn. Pina untaps and still takes another 3 from his crypt. He top decks a Polluted Delta. He casts a Jeweled Lotus, which he cracks right away to cast his Najeela the Blade Blossom. He still cracks his Delta before Bal untaps and searches for a Tropical Island, ending his turn. Bal draws, plays a Morphic Pool and recasts his commander, Thrasios. He then casts a Chromox, imprinting a Sylvan Safekeeper, and passes the turn. Elder plays a Misty Rainforest and casts a Counterbalance, to which Pina responds with an Archivist of Ogma. Elder decides not to crack his fetch, so Pina can maybe draw something to handle David and Bal. Pina still casts a Runaway Together, targeting the Construct and Thrasios, but Bal responds with his Fierce Guardianship on it. Counterbalance seats the table and Elder casts another Shredder, but this one doesn't fly. We're on David's turn, and he casts a Rodrigo's card, Sareth the Viper's Fang. Counterbalance triggers and Elder reveals a Lotus Petal. David then goes to combat and attacks Bal with the Construct, and Toski goes towards Pina, as he has Death Touch from Sareth. No one blocks and David draws 2 cards. He plays a Forest and casts an Elvish Mystic followed by an Arbor Elf, setting up for so many draws and passing. Pina untaps and finally wins a coin flip. He casts an Elves of Deep Shadow and proceeds to combat. He sends Najeela to Bal and the warrior goes towards Elder. He passes, and on the end step Bal flashes in his Opposition Agent to better manage his mana sources. Elder cracks his Misty Rainforest to find an Underground Sea, and Pina draws a card and gains 1 life from Ogma. Counterbalance triggers, where Bal mentioned that the creature tutor being cast could allow him to search for Dothy, and with a turn cycle he could cast Elder's Deluge, which was exiled previously. Therefore, Elder decides not to reveal the card and lets Oppo resolve. Bal gets to his turn and top decks nicely. He plays a Tropical Island and casts the top deck Seedborn Muse. Counterbalance triggers, revealing a Prismatic Vista, so now David responds with a Bal's Trickery, but in response Bal casts his Flusterstorm, so Seedborn does resolve. Bal passes, and in the end step Elder casts a Chain of Vapor on Bal's Seedborn Muse, and once again Bal cracks the same land, Tropical Island, to copy it and target David's construct. He also decides to copy it, sacrificing a forest and targeting Pina's Najeela, but in response to this, Pina casts a March of the Swirling Mist on Najeela and Opposition Agent, smelling like someone wanna go off. Counterbalance triggers, and in response to it, Elder activates Shredder on himself and reveals a Mystic Reflection, so March does resolve. Elder gets to his turn, plays a Morphic Pool and foretells a Mystic Reflection, passing right after. David gets to his turn and casts an Outland Liberator right away. Counterbalance triggers, and a Mana Crypt is revealed. It resolves, becoming Day. He wanted to bait Elder's Reflection, but Elder didn't bite it. He then equips Toski with Shadow Spear and attacks Bal for 2, and Elder for 1 with the Dark, drawing 2 cards. He then plays a Grove of the Burn Wheels and casts a Destiny Spinner, ending his turn. We're back to Pina's turn. His Najeela does phase in, and he once again loses the coin flip. He casts an Eldritch Evolution, sacrificing his Elves of Deep Shadow. The social stack opens, and Elder tells him to tread carefully if he likes the abilities on his creatures, which leads Pina to rethink his options, and as he tells he can get some stuff to handle Toski, Elder lets the spell resolve. He eventually notices Sereth can even protect any attempts at stealing Toski, so he goes for a Dockside Extortionist, triggering and creating 9 treasures. He then casts a Tinderwall and proceeds to combat, sending all his creatures towards Bal, hoping to maintain a ceasefire from Elder's side. Bal blocks a warrior and champs Najeela with a bird. Before damage steal, Pina activates Najeela to gain another combat phase, and the creatures gain lifelink and trample, so Bal takes 6 damage. Pina then attacks again with Najeela and his warriors, creating 3 more warriors. Najeela once again towards Bal and every other creature towards David, since he mainly seeks to regain some life back, and is afraid to steer the waters with Elder. Bal doesn't block, and David blocks what he can kill and takes 2 from the warriors. Pina gains 10 life back and is still afraid of that dress down as he gets to his second main phase and puts an Ad Nauseam on the stack. Bal passes priority, and Elder not only wants that Mana Crypt to combo off next turn with Hullbreaker, it also means it could counter any fast mana Pina might find, so it doesn't even reveal anything from the counterbalance, and the Nose resolves. He goes slowly, pondering if he can survive a turn cycle, but eventually he goes past the point of no return, and once he finds Simian Spirit Guide, it means he only needs to find a Final Fortune or Red Blast to have a shot at this. He keeps digging, but eventually doesn't find any of those, dying to the Nose. Bal gets to his turn, phasing back in Opposition Agent, and considering Seedborn could become something else with Mystic Reflection. This way, he simply casts a Priest of Titania and passes with mana for 1 Thrasios activation. In the end step, Elder activates Codex Shredder on David, milling a crop rotation. He untaps, draws and casts the Mana Crypt, following that with a main phase Hullbreaker Horror, as he has LED in hand. However, in response, David uses Arbor Elf to untap his Taiga to crack the Outland Liberator targeting the Elder's Mana Crypt, and this way Elder is stopped. He still casts the Lion's Eye Diamond, triggering Hullbreaker in order to bounce David's Toski back to his hand, to limit David's options. We are now on David's turn. He recasts Toski Bearer of Secrets, and then equips Shadow Spear on Elvish Mystic, to then attack Elder for 4. Due to Sereth's Death Touch, Elder declines any blocks, so David draws 2 from Toski. In the second main phase, he recasts his Manglehorn, triggering Counterbalance, and despite Destiny Spinner, Elder reveals the card on top, to have information on his next draw, which is a Gilded Drake. Manglehorn enters play and triggers, targeting Codex Shredder, which would be a way for Elder to retrieve his Mana Crypt. In response, Elder mills himself with it, and the Shredder is destroyed. In the end step, Bal activates Thrasios, scrying to the bottom and revealing an Exotic Orchard. He gets to his turn and top decks nicely, putting a Gilded Drake on the stack. Counterbalance triggers and Elder reveals a Spellseeker, so still in response to that, he casts his Mystic Reflection, shooting David's Manglehorn as a target. Hullbreaker Aura triggers and he returns his LED back to his hand, so this way Gilded Drake enters play as a copy of Manglehorn, which triggers and Bal destroys David's Shadow Spear. This way Bal is free to cast his Seedborn Muse, hoping to finally grind some value. He still casts his last card in hand, a Memory's Journey, targeting Elder's Chain of Vapor, in order to deny him the top deck Spellseeker, and then he passes. Elder untaps and Bal holds him in his upkeep to activate Thrasios. He scries to the bottom and reveals a Mindbreak Trap. He does it again, scrying to the bottom and revealing a Neoform. Eldar draws and casts his commander, triggering Hullbreaker. While Seedborn seems the juicier target, Bal tells him to maybe target something else so he can prevent a Ruric Thar cast with his trap, and Eldar then bounces Thrasios, which also does the work. He still casts his LED, triggering Hullbreaker and targeting the Vid's Sarith to be bounced, to hopefully delay the Vid's next turn. Speaking of which, here we are in his untap step, as him and Bal both untap. He draws and casts a delayed blast fireball, to which Bal feels forced to respond, with his hardcast Mindbreak trap. This way the Vid recasts his commander, Ruric Thar, and is required to attack with Toski, sending it towards Eldar who blocks, and then he ends his turn. Bal gets to his turn and recasts his Thrasios from his hand this time. Counterbalance triggers and Eldar reveals a Force of Will, so it resolves. Bal activates Thrasios, crying to the bottom and revealing a Savannah. He passes the turn. In Eldar's upkeep, he activates Thrasios again, scrying to the bottom and revealing a Pact of Negation. Due to Scion of Alastair, Eldar looks at the top 2 cards, sending Force of Will to his graveyard, and draws a card. He has no great options at the moment, so he simply passes, but in his end step, Bal activates Thrasios again, scrying to the bottom and revealing a Veil of Summer. We're back to the Vid's turn. He starts by casting Sarith the Viper's Fang. He follows that with an Eternal Witness, entering play and triggering to return Shadow Spear back to his hand, which he recasts, triggering Ruric Thar for 6 damage. This one, however, is not uncounterable, so Eldar acknowledges the counterbalance trigger, revealing a Swan Song, effectively countering the spear. He then goes to combat and sends the small creatures towards Eldar and Ruric Thar towards Bal, because it has to. Bal does triple block Ruric Thar, which prompts Eldar not to block. Before damage steal, Bal uses Priest to help activate Thrasios, scrying to the bottom and revealing an Avacyn's Pilgrim. Toski triggers and David draws 3 cards. He plays a Yavimaya Cradle of Growth, and follows it with an Eldritch Evolution, sacrificing his Eternal Witness. The table is unsure of what's coming, but can't do much about it, so David finds a Shia Soul of the Wild. He's not done just yet, as he now casts Quirion Ranger, and it seems they have fallen for this trap. When Bal tells Eldar to cast his Dress Down, he tells him it was a bluff. And what a bluff that has proven to be, so David shows a loop where he can bounce Quirion Ranger, which is also a force, to untap Arbor Elf. This way he can generate infinite mana by using Arbor Elf to untap Taiga enchanted with a Wild Growth, and spending only a single green mana to infinitely cast Quirion Ranger. He follows that with the Survival of the Fittest, and Destiny Spinner is giving him the game. He discards an Augur of Autumn to search for a Beast Whisperer, which he casts. Now he can repeat the Quirion Ranger loop to draw as much cards as he needs, to be able to find Zhur-Taa Druid. He casts it and then follows it with a Finale of Devastation, X equals more than 10. Just so Zhur-Taa gains haste, and he can repeat the Quirion Ranger loop, this time untapping Zhur-Taa, each time pinging his opponents to death. Note that with his proposed loop, he could die decking himself out with Beast Whisperer, depending on the number of cards still left in his library. However, simply casting Sylvan Safekeeper or Timur Sabertooth would do the job of removing Whisperer from play. GG. Thank you for joining us for today's match, everyone. This was a crazy match with interesting interactions with Ledger Shredder and Scion of Alastair. Gothic Voidwalker slowed Eldar a lot, but eventually Treasonous Ogre almost gave the win to the Vid. A well-bluffed Dress Down was enough to deter Pina from going for the Derevi win, and eventually dying to his Nos. Hullbreaker almost sealed the deal, and slowed down Bal's Seedborn engine twice, while eventually Toski paired with Sarith gave the Vid enough cards to sneakily find an Ashaya and win under Destiny Spinner's protection. We'd like to start the credits by thanking our current patrons, and especially Izanagi, TJ Rap, Ajimu, Dragonhouse Cat, V, RJ, Heated Chill, Pina, Ricardo, Dragonstake, Katarina, Super Scaldi, Dog, Wyatt, Wicked, Zinan, New Gunsmith, and CJ Wally, our stack breakers. If you want to support us, you can do so by liking this video, subscribing, or by becoming a patron yourself. If you want to go through other Commander adventures, click one of the videos on the right. If you want to talk with us about our games or other EDH related matters, join us on Discord. Join us again next week for a new set of commanders and more decisive plays. See you all then.